Hello, I'm Helen Bradley. Welcome to this video tutorial. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how you can draw hand-drawn style text dividers in Illustrator. Before we get started with this video tutorial, let's look and see what it is that we're trying to achieve. What I'm going to show you is how to create some text dividers in Illustrator. Now, each of these uses different techniques. You're going to learn how to use the Pathfinder tool, how to turn a straight line into a wavy line, how to turn a path into something that looks a little more hand-drawn, and then how to apply brush profiles to lines and how you can flip lines and flip the profiles. There's a whole lot of learning in this video, and at the end you're going to have 4 hand-drawn looking text dividers. To start drawing these text dividers, I'm starting a new document in Illustrator. Mine's 1000 points by 1000 points. You can make yours any size that you like. And basically for these, we're not going to need a lot of palettes because we're really just working with black and white. But I will have my layers palette open just so that I can keep an eye on that. I'm going to start with the line that had the leaves on it. So I've selected a black stroke, no fill. I'm just going to click here on the line segment tool and I'm going to draw a line. And because we want to give these a slightly hand-drawn look, I'm not concerned that this line is not straight. In fact, deliberately I have made it not straight. I'm going to target the line, and to make it wavy we're going to use an effect. I'm going to choose Effect, Distort and Transform, and then Zigzag, because this zigzag effect is going to allow me to make the line curved. By default it's a corner, so I'm just going to click on the preview and you can see that we're getting half the shape that we want, but if I just click on smooth we're getting all of the shape that we want. If you want it to be a little bit more of a bend, just increase the size. And ridges per segment will give you more ridges, but I think this is pretty good, so I'm just going to leave it as it is and click OK. So there's the beginning of our text divider. Now this had some leaves on it, so for the leaves I'm going to target the ellipse tool and I'm going to switch these 2 colors so that I have a fill but no stroke. I'm just going to drag down to create the beginnings of my leaf. Now leaves are pointy at the top and flatter at the bottom, so I'm going to select the direct selection tool, click on this point here and just click to convert it, and that makes it pointy at the top. I can actually drag out a little bit to make it even a bit more pointier. And again, I'm not concerned that I'm dragging it slightly off center because again we're trying to get this sort of slightly hand-drawn look here. Now I'm dragging the bottom part of the leaf in so that we're getting a flat bottom. And now I want to cut a piece out of the leaf, and I'm going to do it using the pen tool, and it's fairly easy, so I don't think that you'll have any problems with it. So let's just target the pen tool, but for now I'm going to switch colors and make this a white fill because we'll be able to see it as we draw it. So I'm going to click out here well below the leaf and start drawing in a slight curve. So I'm dragging upwards to sort of just off the center line a little bit to the right. And I'm going to click in the leaf and I'm going to click back out here and try and make some of that curved line. Now I don't even need to complete my shape, I can just add these points, but I am going to zoom in and make the point a little bit pointier. So let's just go and grab this point here and let's make it a pointy point. And then again with the direct selection tool I can just drag it into position. So I'm looking at the final result in front of me now. Now we're going to actually cut this piece out in a minute, but we're just making sure that we're getting the basic leaf shape that we want. So I'm thinking I want it a little bit more rounded at the point here, not quite so pointy. So if this is my basic leaf shape, I'm going to select over both these pieces. And if we were to have a look in the layers palette, let's just make these pieces a little bit bigger. We have here the curly path, here is the leaf path, and this is going to be the white path, the cut out piece. So I'm going to select both of these, the leaf shape and the cutout piece, and then I'm going to get the Pathfinder. So I'm choosing Window and then Pathfinder. What I want to do is subtract this white piece from the black leaf. So I'm going to click minus front because the white piece is in front of the black one. It's higher up in the layers palette. So I'm just going to click here, and what that does is it just removes that piece from the leaf. So now I have one piece. The leaf is this shape with the middle missing from it. So let's just zoom out, and I'm pressing Control 0 to just get out full size, and I'm just going to drag down holding the Shift key to make this leaf a little bit smaller. Well, it's probably a little bit too small. So I'm just going to make sure that it's the right size here, and now let's just rotate it around because I'm going to start adding it to my shape. I'm going to add the leaf in the sort of dip areas, so I want one here, and then I'm just going to Alt drag to add one here and perhaps change its orientation a little bit. Alt drag and drag this one here, and again I can just change their orientation just a little bit to make it look a little bit more organic. I'm going to Alt drag this leaf over here. Alt dragging just allows me to create a duplicate, and then I'm just dragging to change its orientation, change its rotation. Now if I want the loop to be facing into the plant, into this sort of stem, I could flip this. So I'm going to choose, let's just actually straighten it up so we can see what we're doing. I'm going to choose Object, Transform, Reflect, and I'm going to reflect it over the vertical, and when I do that you can see that now the bendy bit is pointing in the other direction. So I'll just click OK, and now let's rotate it back. So we've got a leaf that the inside is bending appropriately according to which side of the stem it's on. Once I've got it in place, Alt drag to create a second one, Alt drag to add one here. And then I can just replace them where I want them to be, rotate them a little bit to add a bit more variety. Now on the end of this plant there actually was a leaf, so let's just rotate this one a little bit. And then let's Alt drag to create the very last one, and the very last one I was just placing over the end of the plant and trying to line up so that the black line pretty much went into the end of that plant. We might even make this one a bit smaller. And you can do that, you can alter their size as you wish. I'm just holding Shift as I do that to constrain these so that they're resized in proportion. You want to make sure that they don't get skewed out of shape. Now this particular text divider is made out of objects that do not overlap. The only things that overlap are these two here. So I'm going to select all the pieces that go to make it, and I'm going to choose Object Group. And what that does is group them into a single group so that they will travel together. So wherever I drag them, if I drag one piece of it, the whole thing is going to be dragged at the same time. And that's handy when you've got something that is made up of disparate pieces like this one is. I'm also going to create a new layer. Well, actually I've gone ahead and created more than one layer. Let's just go back to one layer and let's lock this one down. And that means that now the next text divider is on a separate layer. It's a little bit easier to organize them that way. So the next text divider is going to be the one that has 3 dots in it. It's a little bit more of a rustic look, and I'm going to use the pen tool to do it, but again we're looking at really simple pen tool shapes here. So click on the pen tool. I'm going to make sure that I have a stroke and no fill, and I'm just going to draw a curve. It's really all I want, but I do want my curve to have a little bit more size than this one does. So let's just select it with the selection tool and target the stroke and just increase the stroke a little bit. So this is the beginnings of my piece, and the rest of my piece is actually 2 more pieces just like this. So I'm going to Alt drag this across here, and I'm going to Alt drag this one here. This one needs to be flipped, so I could do the reflect that I did down here, but I can also just rotate this, and it may be simpler just to rotate it. And again, I'm not concerned that I'm not rotating this exactly 180 degrees, because the idea of these dividers is that they're going to look very slightly hand-drawn, so I don't want them to look perfect. Well, one of the don't look perfect problems here is that these lines aren't in any way bendy, but we could solve that by applying the Wrinkle Tool to them. So let's click here on the tool position that is showing the Width tool, and I'm just going to click and choose the Wrinkle Tool. And then I'm just going to go back and double click on this because I want to see what the brush settings are. Right now the wrinkle is not going to work in a horizontal direction, and that actually works pretty well for me because I want to wrinkle this a little bit, but I don't particularly want to do it in a horizontal direction. I do want it to be quite not so intense, so I'm going to change this down to 15% and just see how that works for me. And the width, I'm probably going to take this up. So I'm probably going to take this up to 200 and just test this with width and height of the brush being 200 and click OK. And now let's see what happens when I just click on this line. So I just want to click the very littlest bit on this line. Well, I need to target the line that I'm going to wrinkle. I think this is a little bit too wrinkled, so let's just wind this back by pressing Control Z. Now I've taken out one of the wrinkles. I hit it twice and I'm seeing a better result with just one. So again, targeting the next line, click on the Wrinkle Tool. I've got my settings in place and I'm just going to click very slightly on this line and then click away from it. And you can see that it's getting this very slight wrinkling of the line, which is giving it a hand-drawn look. And again with this one, just going to wrinkle it very, very slightly. So taking that setting down seems to be a good approach to take. Now we want our sort of pebbles, and we had 3 pebbles that were in between these lines. And we're going to do that with the pen tool. And the reason why we're going to do it with the pen tool is because we're going to trust that we're not very good at drawing circles with the pen tool, because that's the whole idea. So I'm just going to click and drag here, and then click and drag, click and drag, click and drag, and then click, because I want an uneven shape. I don't want this to look round, but I also want it to be filled and not stroked. So I'm just going to click here to reverse these so it's got a fill on it and no stroke. Now I think I've got something that is perhaps a little bit too organic, so I'm just going to straighten it up a little bit and just try and make it look a little bit more like a circle, but not quite. So there's the first of my sort of shapes that I'm going to use. I'm going to select it with the selection tool and Alt drag 2 more copies of it away, because I can create the second and third rocks from these basic shapes. So again, selecting this, select the direct selection tool, and I can just reshape these slightly by clicking on the handle and just moving them into slightly different positions. And then let's go to this one here, and again grabbing its handles and slightly reshaping it. And this is actually kind of a good task to do with the pen tool, particularly if you're not used to using the pen tool, because you're not looking for perfection, you're just looking for an effect. So provided you get things that look a little bit like rocks, then you're fine with these shapes. So having created these shapes, they're now way too big, so I'm going to click on them with the selection tool and I'm going to size them. So this one needs to be really quite small, but I'm going to size it holding the Shift key so that I don't lose its proportions. This one needs to be much smaller, but not as small as this one. And then this one needs to be about the size of the very smallest one. So again, I'm just going to drag it down to make it small enough and just line these up and see how they look together. And once I'm happy with them, I'm going to group them. So I'm going to choose Object, Group. And that will have them travel as a group. And I'm just going to position them in place here and then Alt drag to position a second copy of them. And now all I need to do is just to line up these more hand-drawn pieces so that it actually runs into this line. And I'm just shaping it so that it looks good. Now I'm a little bit worried about these. I think they're a little bit too far apart, so let's ungroup them. Let's move them a little bit closer to each other. And let's ungroup this lot, move them just a little bit closer to each other. And then again, once I've finished with this shape, because it's made up of pieces that are all independent of each other and it's not possible to join them into a single shape, let's select them and let's choose Object Group so that these two become a single grouped object. It's just going to be easier to move them around and make sure that when we select any piece of this line, that the whole line goes with it. So we've created two hand-drawn lines. Let's go now and create something a little bit different. This next text divider is the one that is simply a set of loops. It's probably the hardest one of the lot to draw because you're going to have to come to grips with the pen tool, but it is also a really good exercise to use with the pen tool. So let's just grab the pen tool and let's start drawing it. I'm going to start here and draw up in this direction, so I'm going to click and drag and then let go the mouse button so my line is heading up in this direction. Now I want to create a bendy bit here, so the next piece I'm going to create is going to be pointing in this direction, so I'm going to click and drag down. And now I want to make my loop, and I'm going to do that using a few pen strokes. So I'm going to click here to start it, and you can see that it's gone off in the direction I don't really want it to go off in. I'm just going to ignore that for now. I'm going to click here and head in this direction because I want to finish this loop. And I'm just ignoring this mess. And I'm going to go over here and I'm going to start curving round to create the uppointing loop. So I'm going to click and drag here, and I'm going to click and drag here, and then we're going to create this loop. Click and drag. This time we're going to finish the loop, so we're heading in a downwards direction. Click and drag downwards. Now I'm going to click here and then just click to finish, and this is the first part of my loop. And if you get anything that's even half as good as this, you're on your way. It's not particularly easy to draw if you're not familiar with the pen tool, but it's really easy to clean up. So once I've created this shape, I'm going to the direct selection tool. I'm just going to click on the shape and I'm interested in targeting the problems. So let's just zoom in a little bit to see these problem areas and to fix them. Well, part of the problem with this is caused by this handle being just too long. So I'm going to bring the handle back, and then I'm going to reposition this anchor point and then straighten this one up a little bit. Drag it down and just reshape it because I want it to look like a nice loop. And that's pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. Again, it needs to have a slightly hand-drawn look. We're not looking for perfection. Just going to round out the start of this a little bit and perhaps drag up a little bit here just to round this line. Also thinking that this is still a bit too deep a curve. So now let's go and just straighten up this one. Ultimately, this line is going to have lots and lots of these curves on it, but we're going to create it by just copying the ones that we've created here. So we really only need the two curves, and then we're going to join it all together in a minute. And again, I'm just slightly reshaping this, trying to smooth this out a little bit. Anywhere where it's sort of not smooth, I just need to reform some of the shapes here. You'll find that longer shapes where the handles are longer are always a little bit smoother than those where the handles are shorter. And here, I'm just going to reshape this line. I think I've got too many anchor points. I seem to have two anchor points pretty much side by side here. I'm going to press the minus key on the keyboard and just delete the second of these anchor points. I want to make sure I'm over the anchor point and just press on it to delete it. Then press the letter A again to go back to this direct selection tool that allows me to reselect these anchor points and just reshape them. So let's just have a look at this. I'm just going to zoom out a little bit. I'm going to have a look at the line from a distance because that's going to tell me some things about this line, and what it's telling me right now is it's probably got a few too many loops in it. But let's just select over this. I'm going to do that with the selection tool, select over all of these points, and now let's just resize this. So I'm going to shift drag down to make it much smaller because I want 3 of these across the screen. You'll find that when you shrink them down, they take on a slightly different look. They don't look quite as rough as they did at a large size. Then with this shape selected, we're going to Alt drag 2 more copies away. And then we're going to join these up. So I'm going to position them so that they are relatively close to each other, and then let's go in and do the joining. I'm going to select the zoom tool here and just zoom over these 2 points because these are the 2 points we're interested in. I'm going to click on this anchor, shift click on this anchor. So I have these 2 anchor points selected. Object, path, join. And that joins these 2 anchor points together, and of course because we've got 2 anchor points really close to each other, we're getting this bend in the line. Well, having joined the 2 lines together, we can go back to this delete anchor point tool and just take out one of those anchors because we've got a joined up line that we wanted, but we just had one too many anchor points as a result. Let's go back to the selection tool. Let's zoom back out. And we're going to look for this join. And again, with the white tool, this direct selection tool, I'm going to click on this particular anchor point, and then I'm going to shift click on this one. These are the 2 anchor points we want to join. Object, path, join. And again, we've got one too many anchor points, but we've got the joined path that we wanted. Let's go back to the delete anchor point tool and just click on one of these to remove it. So now it's time to zoom back out and just check and see what our line looks like. And we can tweak it from here. So if you wanted it, for example, I think I want this area of the line, this bit here, to be out a bit. Well, I can do that. I can select over just these anchor points. So I'm going to select to make sure that I have only these selected, and then I'm going to drag with my mouse. And that's going to increase the space here so that this line is stretched out a little bit. And I could come back in here then and just reshape this anchor. Just going to position it where I can see it. Click A to select this anchor point and then just reshape this line a little bit so it's a little bit smoother. You'll need to do a combination of looking at it close up and looking at it from a distance just to make sure that you're getting it right. And again, with this shape selected, I'm going to pull this line out a little bit. So I'm going to target the direct selection tool, select over the anchor points that I'm interested in so that these are selected but the rest of the line is not, and I'm just going to give it a pull to just reshape it. And then target this anchor point and just reshape it a little bit. With reshaping these lines a little bit, what we're doing also is that we're ensuring that each of these loops is going to look just a little bit different. So it's going to look a little bit less as if we grabbed these shapes and just duplicated them. Let's zoom out again and see what we've got. Well, I think I want to pull the whole of this line from this point over. So again, selection tool to select the line, direct selection tool here to select all these points that I want to drag, these, and then click and drag this line. So I'm leaving this part of the line behind and dragging this one out just to get that balance. I would probably come in and reshape this a little bit, but let's call this good. Now this is a single line, so it's going to travel by itself. We can grab on any part of the line with the selection tool, and when we move it, the whole line moves. So we don't need to do anything special to group this one because it doesn't need to be grouped. But again, I've got it on a layer with the other one. Let's just create a new layer and let's just move this onto its own layer just for neatness sake so that I have one line, one of these graphic text dividers per layer in the document. So let's finish up with one final shape, and we're going to do this using brush profiles and a little bit of a curve. For this text divider, we're going to create two pieces and then reflect them. So we're going to start with a straight line. And again, not ensuring that it's perfectly straight because we don't really want it to be perfectly straight. Now let's put a bend in it using that same zigzag effect. So we're choosing Effect, Distort and Transform, and then Zigzag. We want to preview what we've got, and we want it to be smooth, but I don't want it to have any near the number of curves in it. So let's bring the ridges per segment down to 2 and see what that looks like. Well, actually, let's bring it down to 1. This is a better shape for my line, so I'm just going to click OK. For this line, we're going to apply a brush profile to it, and that's going to change the way the line looks. So from here, we're going to select the basic brush style, but from Uniform, we're going to click down here and choose this width profile. And what that does is thicken up one end of the line and make the other end thinner. We can increase the line weight by increasing the stroke. Now, this is all very well, but in actual fact, I wanted this end to be the thin end and this end to be the thick end. Now, the issue with this is that I want two lines that are going to butt up against each other. So this one is going to be on this side of the shape, but I want the reverse to be on the other side. So let's select the shape and let's Alt drag a duplicate away. But I want to reverse the profile on this line, and you'll see that there's not a reverse profile. The reason for this is that the line has been drawn in one direction. If I change the direction of the line, then we'll actually be able to change the way that the brush profile is being applied to the line. And we do that by going back to the pen tool, and we're just going to click on one of these anchor points. And what that does is it reverses the line, and in reversing the line, it's reversing how the brush profile is being applied to that line. So we've got now two lines that are thick in the middle and thin on the outside. Now the problem remains that this shape is going up and this one's going down. I need to flip this, but anything I do with this line right now is not going to flip it. I can't flip it horizontally, and I can't just reshape the line because that's having no effect on it at all. If I want to flip this, I'm going to need first to expand this shape. So with it selected, I'm going to choose Object, Expand Appearance. And that's expanded the shape of this object, so now I can reflect it. Object, Transform, Reflect, and I want to reflect it over the horizontal so it becomes the exact opposite of this one here, and just click OK. So here are my two shapes. For the sake of completeness, I will probably expand this one as well, Object, Expand Appearance, but I don't technically need to do that. Now for these shapes, they had a little piece in the middle, and we're just going to again draw that using the pen tool. I'm just going to grab the pen tool, and I'm going to create something that sort of looks like a diamond shape, but again with this sort of hand-drawn appearance. I'm just doing it by just clicking around to create a sort of rough diamond shape. Once I have my basic shape, I can then select it with the selection tool. Click on the selection tool or press the letter V, and then just drag in to make it a little bit smaller. I'm going to position it in the middle here. Let's go and have a look a little more closely at the ends of this line. Here I've got one anchor point here and one anchor point here. I can drag this anchor point out to sort of bend it around this shape. And if I need an extra anchor point, I can just click the Add Anchor Point tool, and it gives me the chance of adding an extra anchor point, which I then select using the Direct Selection tool, and I can now bend this line at this anchor point. And that allows me to create a sort of shape that's bending around another shape. Let's do that for this shape over here. Again, clicking the Direct Selection tool, the letter A, bending this around, so I'm grabbing these anchor points and just moving them into position. I need another anchor point in the middle, so I'm going to choose the Add Anchor Point tool. In fact, I might add a couple of points here. just clicking on the edge of the path to add those anchors, and then just dragging inwards. To reshape these, I can just click on the Convert tool here, which is going to convert them into a rounded shape rather than being a more angular shape. This one probably needs to be converted as well. I'll click on that point and just convert it, and that's given it that sort of round appearance. Let's go back out with Control 0. And there again is another one of these hand-drawn lines. If we wanted to, we could apply the Wrinkle Tool to this one as well, but I'm just going to call it good for now. Select the shape. I'm going to group it, Object, Group, so it travels all together so that moving one piece of the line moves the entire line. So there you have some basic text dividers. It's my intention to publish another video at some stage with some more text dividers with these sort of hand-drawn styles. They're a really nice little project to polish your Illustrator skills. There's lots of things that you can learn in creating them. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I'm Helen Bradley. Thank you for joining me for this video tutorial. Look out for more video tutorials like this here on my YouTube channel. And consider subscribing to my channel and you'll be alerted when new videos are produced. And visit my website at projectwoman.com, where you'll find more tips, tricks and tutorials on a range of applications, including Photoshop, Lightroom, Illustrator and a whole lot more.